Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Lifestyle with Dr. Moby. I'm Dr. Moby, and today we are honored with great guest. Let's welcome Kelle. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Well, thank you for joining our show and tell us about yourself.
I'm Kelle Sparta. I'm a transformational shaman. I have been working in or studying the personal growth and development field since I was 5 years old. My mother raised me in this. And so, given that I just turned 52, that's a long time. And so I currently help people to get over their childhood traumas and to step forward into the world in their power and their purpose.
Very nice, and God bless you for such amazing work you're doing. So, also tell us a little bit about your passion or how did you start doing this?
Well, it's really interesting because having been raised in this, people ask me all the time, well, how long have you been coaching or how long have you been doing your work? And I have high school yearbook signatures that read like my client testimonials today. So it's not so much what I do as who I am. And so I have been super excited about personal growth and understanding how the brain works, understanding how the mind works. And then I also have this engineer brain. And so I go into the energetic world and I am able to map out what I see and explain it in terms that the average person can understand. And so when I combine those two pieces, personal growth and energetics, the intersection between the two is actually where transformation actually lives. And so that's what I just love to do.
Mhm. Yes, an interesting thing about transformation is, I would like to, of course, ask you more questions about it. A lot of people actually, they kind of change and they don't know that the change has occurred. Or when do you think they realize that they need to transform or retransform them back?
So typically when somebody's going to be trying to transform, the first thing that happens is there's an awareness that's raised around, well,
Mhm.
this isn't working for me, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, they actually have to go into a process which is called the crystallization of discontent. And
Mhm.
that's where they take all of the things that they've been tolerating and bring them to the surface and become aware of exactly how unhappy they are, because that is the fuel that you use to move from where you are through to the change process. And if you don't have sufficient fuel, when you hit the hard parts in the journey, you're just going to fall back to where you started.
Mhm.
And so
And
that crystallization piece is super important.
and also for them to realize that they have changed. So many times, people think that they are in this kind of cocoon or status quo. They don't even realize that they have entered another phase or another part in their life which they think is normal.
Well, and I think that right now, in particular, with the pandemic being such a influence in our lives, the there are factors at play that most people don't realize are actually creating change.
Hmm.
There's been a forced hermitage, and typically, right before you go through an initiatory process, you will go into a hermitage, and the entire world has been in this hermitage, and so we're all standing on this precipice. And I've been looking back recently over media and in the US, and the media here has been intensely shifting over the last 10 years, so much more than it ever did in any other previous 10-year cycle in my lifetime. And I'm realizing how much that shift has been influenced by recent events, and by the pandemic has even amplified it further. And so we're all in this massive change cycle right now. And some of us more than others, but we're all in it whether we want to admit it or not.
That is true. COVID has really changed a lot of things for us. So, a lot of people, they are finding themselves in kind of different, or we never thought this will happen, that now we have a new kind of lifestyle. Everything has changed for, devastating for most of people, as you know. And so but we, human history is always about survival. So we survived many pandemics, and we really survived this one too.
Absolutely.
And now the question becomes is what next? How are we gonna transform ourselves back uh, to a new beginning? I'm sure we learned a lot from this.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that this has done, and this is something I was talking to somebody about yesterday,
Hmm.
if you look at the Mayan calendar in 2012, it was the end of the 13,000 year cycle, and the thing that happens is that everything speeds up as you come up to that, and then things start to slow back down as you come back out of it. And I honestly think that part of the pandemic is about teaching us how to slow back down again, because we've been so like running like crazy. And so we're learning how to be still again. We're learning how to be present again, and we're learning how to be with ourselves. And for many people, you're seeing with the great resignation that's happening here in the US, that everybody's quitting their jobs and trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives. And that's what happens when you have nothing to distract you for a long enough time. Is you have to look at yourself and go, oh, hey, wait a minute, maybe I don't like what I'm doing, and maybe I need to do something different.
Hmm. And also tell me a little bit about transformation. I'm sure you have a lot of clients who discuss with you. Um, do you find more male, female, different age groups, or is it pretty much everyone?
Well, I find that in the world that I'm in, it's about 75% of it is women. What I found is that men tend to come into transformational work when there is a major life transition for them. If they have the death of a parent, or the a divorce, or the loss of a job, something that's a watershed moment in their life that causes them to like look up from the grindstone and go, oh, wait a minute, what's going on? And
Mhm.
that's when they tend to come into this work. Women tend to be more self-reflective, sort of in general,
Okay.
but not when they have young children in the house. So, they don't have time when they have young children in the house. And it's gross generalizations, but that's generally how it ends up happening.
So you have seen mostly then women basically consult you more than men, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Usually women 35 plus
35
is
plus.
is who I end up with in my programs. So
And have you seen a particular pattern among like the trends, or
in terms of,
like your client base? Like, have you seen there are certain things which is common among many of those?
yeah, there's a lot of people who have sort of, they've got the trauma brain responses that are going on, and that may be either because they had a challenged childhood, or
Mhm.
they had parents that were over demanding, or they had a bully that made them feel unsafe for any length of time. Most of them have done some therapy, and they get to a certain point in therapy and it just stops working,
Mhm.
and then they're like, okay, now what? Right. And so they start looking for another option. And that's where I generally start working with them. And I'm like, look, I'm not going to make you guess at the answers like a therapist does. I'm just going to tell you, okay, here's the way that your brain is tweaking, and here's how to look at it differently. And it'll make your brain go a little as you do it. But once you get your brain in the right direction, everything in life starts to look different. Right.
Mhm.
And so I work with what I refer to as the wounded well.
Mhm.
So, they've done the deeper levels of therapy, they've gotten through the trauma, and now they're on the other side trying to find happiness.
Okay, so happiness.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure you are seeing a lot of clients with PTSD too. So.
Yeah, and not actual active PTSD, because that's usually in therapy,
Mhm.
but the remnants of CPTSD, which is complex PTSD, which is usually brought on through long-term exposure to feeling unsafe.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I see a lot of the remainders of that.
And how about abuse or some those domestic?
Yep. Yep. So, people who have been abused, people who have been bullied, people who have been told that they were never good enough. That's really, I get a lot of people with imposter syndrome, people who are anxious all the time, people who find that their monkey mind runs wild with them, right? And
Mhm.
they get onto this what if roller coaster. I get a lot of what I refer to as strong women. They're the rock in everybody else's life, and they can make everything work for everyone else. But inside, they're going, "What if I screw up? What if everybody hates me? What if I don't get it right? I've got to be perfect no matter what." But on the outside, they're cool, calm, and collected. Nobody would know that that's what's going on inside their heads.
Mm.
Those are my people. Yeah.
So yeah, tell me, because I get also a lot of we get a lot of interns, and they sometimes feel that they're not good enough, or they feel that they have kind of low self-esteem. So
Mhm.
so tell me, how can we help them, or what things we should counsel them, or that would help them to promote their self-esteem?
Well, I think one of the first things is that when you come in with low self-esteem, what happens is the average US child receives 437 negative messages a day to 3 positive ones. And
Wow.
yeah, it's insane, right?
Yes.
It's hard to think well of yourself when that's the case. And so, the first thing I have people do is write down everything nice anybody's ever said to them and start reading it over and over again, right?
Very good.
Because you've got to start taking it in, because when you hear all of those negative messages, the positive ones are like, yeah, right. you know you go with the dominant force, right? And so what you have to do is balance the scales. You have to come back and say, here's all the good things, here's everything that I did do well, and start balancing it out. And then you also have to take the what ifs, the negative what ifs, and
Mm,
say, okay, well, I can what if to death. What if this horrible thing happens? Well, what if this great thing happens? You've
mm,
got to start balancing your what ifs with the positives as well.
mm. Yeah, and that is true. A lot of things actually, we are afraid of failure, and we are afraid of what if this, yes, but we never think that. But mind works beautifully both ways, but especially it really works very well if you believe in positivity.
Yeah.
Then, they say, I think there's an old saying, I don't know if you know, is that you keep on saying negative things, then negative things do happen. And that's true.
Yeah. What you focus on expands. That is absolute truth.
True.
So, having a gratitude practice, having a practice of telling yourself good things about yourself, saying loving things to yourself in the morning in front of the mirror, all of these things actually really do help.
They do have. That's true. And what about, I always talk about a little bit positive energy. So, role of environment is so huge. So if you go out and, seek the natural, sunlight, and just light, even the look at the sky, the birds, and night tends to bring positivity for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
At the very least, it brings peace, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's this way that when you step out in nature, if you just become present to it, you just there was a speaker at an event I went to recently. His name was Harry Sherwood,
Mhm.
and he had been studying to be a monk in China. And he said something so profound in his talk on presence. He said, if you sit with a tree and a leaf falls from the tree, you
Mhm.
have to recognize that that is the only time that leaf will ever fall from that tree. And it will fall in a way that is utterly unique to it. And the fact that you get to share in that moment is a profound experience. And I was like,
Wow.
oh,
That is
such a beautiful thought, right?
that is true. Yeah, we always see the leaf falling, and actually, I tell a lot of my folks up, when I say, well, look at these trees, and they lose all the leaves. Imagine if we were tree, and every season we lose, and we have no leaf left, nothing, no food, nothing. And then every year, all even better leaves come every year. But imagine for once, even think like that. So, but if we really worry about what will happen, how we're going to get all the leaves back, it's scary. It is scary.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. So one of the things what you're describing in shamanism would be referred to as a shamanic death.
Hmm.
right? It's
Yeah.
it's a process that we go through where we let go of the person that we are in order to become the person we are becoming.
Yeah.
And the ego that is dying has a survival mechanism, and
That's
it tries to stop us from killing it off. And so, you go through this point in your change process where you're just sitting in the emptiness, which is that empty tree, right?
yeah.
And that's when the monkey mind gets loudest. It goes, this was a bad idea. What were we thinking? I don't know what to do. And you have to be able to be with that monkey mind and say, it's okay. I made this choice. I'm not changing my mind. I actually encourage people when you make a change like that, that you need to like I usually use a metaphor of buying a new couch. You need to
Mhm.
get rid of the old couch in a way that you can't get it back, like burn it in the backyard, right? Because otherwise, when you're sitting in the empty room waiting for that new couch to come in, you're going to be freaking out and you're going to be like, yeah, I know there was a spring that was coming up in my butt, but my butt fit so perfectly in that seat, and maybe I just need it back, and I'll just drag it out of the basement where I left it, right?
Mhm.
So that's why I always say, like, just burn the couch in the backyard because that way you can't go back. Like Cortez burning the ships when they got here, right?
Yeah.
Same idea.
And that is true. And also, other thing, I always emphasize is to make sure, they eat better and sleep better. So a lot of people, they are sitting, unfortunately, when they are sad, they are sitting on the couch and not moving at all for hours and hours. And I think there is both way. It works both ways. If you force yourself, that's fine. Don't, even if you don't like to go out, and if you don't like to even move, but if you force yourself to move and do things every few minutes, maybe let's say every 1 hour you have to walk 5 blocks or something, 1 block
Right.
here, then actually that energy, it somehow really brings good things to your body anyways. So
Yeah.
it doesn't matter you are feel like doing it or not, but actually it really transforms you. So there is a mechanism in the brain that tends to actually work other routes. So with your movements, it tends to actually bring the good thoughts and process good energy for sure.
Yeah. Well, and energetically, every time we walk through a doorway, we shift into a new state of being.
Mm.
And so, literally, just changing rooms can sometimes be helpful.
Yeah, and same by it actually sleep has a lot to do with that. So if you are spending a lot of time in a room and unable to sleep, and actually you're laying in bed and your mind is like a magnet, it attracts good and bad very well.
Yeah.
And so it remembers every night you did not have a good night's sleep in that room. So if you change that room or the environment, a lot of people do sleep better. Okay.
Yeah.
And that happens, they have probably seen that when they're traveling outside their home environment, they tend to feel better, sleep better because all that negative energy, thought environment is gone. And then they have it. So I say, okay, change the room even in your house or change the environment. You said if you're feeling sad or depressed, just change it, change the colors, whatever. And then let your mind rethink, rewire, like you're saying, throw the couch out completely and burn it, whatever.
Yeah.
No need to keep it. So I think it really makes a difference. It really makes a difference to somebody who actually practice that.
Yeah, I agree. There's a couple of things that I recommend when my clients can't sleep, and one of them is my people have constantly got like this list of things that they have to do running through their heads. So the first thing I say is, look, put a pen and paper next to your bed, write down everything that you have to do for the next day, get it all out of your brain so it's on paper. Leave the pen and paper next to your bed so when you wake up in the middle of the night going, I forgot this thing, you can just write it down and go back to sleep and be done so you're not trying to groove it into your brain to remember it in the morning. And the other thing that I recommend is that they sleep whole. And what I mean by that is that you pull your energy back from every place that you've set it during the day and just bring all your energy home to you so that you can sleep as yourself throughout the evening. And then in the morning, you can wake up and choose what you want to put your energy back out to again. But if for that evening, you're sleeping whole. And then on the days that I can't sleep, I will lay for 10, 15 minutes. If I cannot sleep after 10 or 15 minutes, I actually get up and I go out and I sit in the living room so that my awake time is always spent in my waking space and my sleep time is always spent in my sleeping space. And I wait until I'm sleepy to go back to the bed. And that way my brain is trained that when I'm in the bed, I'm supposed to be sleeping.
And that is a beautiful thought. That's true, because the brain actually works, is how we train it. So if you are in bed and unable to sleep for a long time, then I actually think it's okay to do that. And like I say, I give analogy: if you go to kitchen, you start salivating or you start thinking about food. Same way, when you should be in the bed or place to sleep, your mind should slow down, and or at least should think this is not the place to keep doing things which you are not supposed to do. So but if you cross those boundaries many times, then it changes the actually learning process for the brain. And brain is, remember, you can teach anything, so whether good or bad, unfortunately, right?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, but if you teach good things, it's going to help you. And if you cross those lines, and we have to remember, our body, every cell, every part of our body is very well organized. It has its rhythm, it has its clock, beautifully done. And then it kind of and it realigns with the outside world beautifully every day. And it drifts a little bit and we don't realize, but it needs to realign with outside every day. And if we don't do that, then we mess up all our internal hormones. And not only that, also how we feel. We become sad, depressed. I'm sure people have experienced when they have winter blues. So those are real things. So that is because of our neurochemistry, how the brain is wired, and so forth.
Yep.
So any final message you have for our audience?
Yeah, that happiness is possible. This is the thing, is that there's so many people who are just like white knuckling life and just trying to get through the next day. I would like to invite you to set your intentions higher, to set your aspirations higher. Don't set your aspiration for getting through the day. Set your aspiration for enjoying your life. Because when you set your aspiration there, you will set up the cognitive dissonance that you need in order to make the changes that will actually get you to that place where you're happy.
And that is true. So and where people can get you, do you have your website?
Yes, you can reach me at kellysparta.com. Super easy. My name's on the screen.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can also check out my podcast at Spirit Sherpa, SHERPA, podcast.com, or Spirit Sherpa on any podcast player.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming, and it was great talking to you and learning all your basic concepts about transformation. Thank you for coming to our show. Take care.